Where would I be without that? Sorry, it's really overwhelming when I think about it. Growing up, I was in and around people that were of faith, who had belief. I was in and out of private schools, so that exposed me to different concepts of a relationship or doing life with God. By the time I was sort of in my 20s, moved out of home, came to Brisbane, was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and that kind of ended not so well, because I didn't know who I was as a person. The things that I had found my identity in had led me down a path where I was looking for approval from other people and looking for direction in all the wrong places. And it got me in a position where it was pretty dark and I wasn't really happy. I would put on a big smile with my friends and my family. I didn't want them to know how black everything was on the inside, and that attracted relationships in my life that were not healthy. And I think from there I had an encounter with God that I will never forget, and I suppose that's probably where my first real encounter with powerful prayer came from. And it was at a time where I didn't have a relationship with God. I knew about Him, I had a belief in Him, but at this one particular point I just cried out, and it was this most simple prayer: God, have mercy, because I had no strength left. And He responded to that prayer through a work colleague who rang on the phone, and I answered. I didn't have time to explain what was going on, what had happened, and being my manager, could be quite authoritative. Beautiful woman though. She very firmly said over the phone, before I even said hello, she said, I've had a word from God, your life is in danger, you need to get in the car, get your dog and come to my house. And so in that moment, God became real to me. He became a God that was interested in me and what was happening in my life in a way that I just could not deny, because there is no way knowing that she would have been aware of what had happened. And if it had have been just my manager calling and saying, come to my house, I probably wouldn't have. Out of pride, out of embarrassment, I wouldn't have gone there. But because she said, I have a word from God, I had a choice. Do I let Him in or do I ignore it? And that was the key moment that changed my life, out of that very simple prayer, God have mercy. And so I did, and I packed my things and I went and lived with them for a few months. And coming to know Him has been the growth of my prayer and my communication with God. In the early stages it was, okay God, who are you? How do I get to know you? How do I pray to you? I remember writing my prayer thinking, I don't even know how to do this. I don't know how to pray, but someone had approached me and asked if I would stand in the gap for them. I didn't even know what that meant. I was like, what do you mean stand in the gap? Will you pray for me and my family because of this situation? I was like, I'd love to. I don't know how to do it, but I'd love to. And so I really had to learn to listen and ask God, I'm here. How do I do this? I would go to the Bible, He would highlight scriptures, and I would write them down and fumble my way around and kind of try and format a prayer, because I didn't know what I was doing. But it grew and developed, and then I got more comfortable with it. It became more of conversation and more of a relationship with God, which was awesome. As it is continually doing, it evolves, it develops and it changes. And I remember this instance, I'd been going to church for a few months and I finished the service and it was a beautiful message. I couldn't tell you what it was about, but I'd really engaged, I'd sat through the whole thing, but I was so hungry at the end of it. I wanted more, but I also felt like I needed to pray, to go deeper and to just really find out who I am in Christ and who God is. But it was like I didn't have the words to do it. I didn't know how to pray that prayer, and try to fumble around a format and write things down. It's not where my heart was at. So I remember going to my pastor and saying, oh look, I feel like I need to pray. I don't know what to pray. Can we have a meeting? Can you help me? And he said, yes, that'd be great, let's make a time. And I was like, okay, that's awesome. And I left, but I was like, but I need to pray now. There was like an urgency, I need this to happen now. And with the family that I was staying with at the time, and I just shared, I was like, I feel like I need to pray, but I don't have the words, I don't know what to do. And I remember she took me aside and just sort of said, would you like to receive tongues? And I was like, I don't really know what that's all about. Like, I've heard people at church using it. I don't know, I have no reference for it. I had no understanding of it. But if that's going to help me in this moment, then yes, I want it. She's like, okay, well, when my husband gets home, we'll pray. And I was like, oh man, no, I need to pray now. The urgency was just growing. Praise God, he walked in the door at that very moment. Didn't have time to do the, hi honey, how was your day? She was just, okay, we're praying for Rani, she wants tongues. Walked in the door, they laid hands on me, prayed, and I received the gift of tongues. And it was like, okay, well, you have to speak it. It's not just gonna come. So I was like, okay, I'm just making these utterances, and I was timid and quiet, and I didn't really know what to do. And I was like, okay, great, thank you. I knew something had happened. Thanked them and went to my room, shut the door, and was like, okay, this is new. I don't know what to do with this, but let's have a go. So I closed my door, and for the next 20 minutes, I just began to pray in tongues, and it was the most incredible experience. It was like a release, and once I started, it just bubbled over and kept going. So I suppose at that point, if I look at my walk and my journey with God and my discovery of prayer, as very much a believer and very hungry and excited about the whole concept. Another significant point for me, which really highlighted the value and the importance of speaking in tongues, and prayer and fasting. There was an occasion where I'd been spending time with God, and he had put in my heart to fast, but I didn't have a reason. I didn't know why. But he said, for the next week, fast. And I thought, okay, I'll be obedient. I don't understand it. So I did. And in my prayer time, because I wasn't sure what the fast was about, I just spent the time praying in tongues without understanding, but just trusting that if God has called me to it, there's a reason for it. And then, I hope I don't get emotional. And then a week later, the fast ended suddenly because I was in a car accident. I believe that the week prior to that, spent in prayer, is what enabled me to come out of that accident with just a bruise and nothing else. It's more than just believing, and it's more than just intimacy, and it's learning to sit in the authority that God has given me. And so my prayers now again have really shifted from another level of intimacy where I'm seated with Christ. I suppose if I was to try and put words to it, it's like going from not knowing God, but Him still responding to my prayer, to believing in God and not having an understanding, to having a more developed understanding of who He is and and the examples of prayer that He's outlined for us in His Word, and recognising who I am as a child of God and the authority that I carry because I am His daughter, and because everything He did on the cross makes way for us all to be sons and daughters of Christ and to stand in the authority that He has given to all of us. Individually at the moment, going on this beautiful journey with God, and really growing to love the experience of prayer and worship as a wash as one. It's almost like to worship and to pray as that vehicle to encounter God, and so the marriage of both of them together, and the different levels of encounter, and the ability to go to the throne room and discover God's heart on issues for me personally, and issues when I'm standing in prayer for friends. It's just been a beautiful exploration that I'm still learning and journeying through at the moment. But it's almost essentially like I can start in one place with worship and have an idea or a thought of where prayer's going to go, and it sort of happens, and then more worship on top, and it's like these beautiful layers, and it just grows and develops, and I think it just takes the prayer to another level, and the encounter that comes with that is a real true reflection, I believe then, of not just my heart but of God's heart. In the busyness of life, trying to prioritise and get things done, I tend to be a bit task focused at times. So if my task list is quite long, it's like, okay, how do I get through all of this? And then coming back to that point of remembrance, and when I look at the seasons in my life when I have the time and the structure for God and put Him first and have that prayer time, is when I'm able to complete things with greater ease, and I'm able to order my thinking better and prioritise things better, and fitting in the stuff around God always works so much better. I don't think I would be able to have the impact or capacity that I have without prayer. And there's such a burning desire in my heart for people to really grasp that, and not just pray from a place of I'm here and God's up there, God hear my prayer, but from that place of I'm here seated with God and taking the time to spend with God face to face. God, what's your will? What's my part to play? And then from that encounter with God, speaking it out, declaring it, praying it, and releasing His kingdom on earth and in lives that desperately, desperately need it. That there would be an awakening